One of the things that I tend to spend a lot of time reflecting on is about this issue of forgiveness. It's something that has earned me some very colorful reactions from a lot of people over the years. Because when I think of the way people emphasize whether or not they're going to forgive others, it is quite ironic because the way they view it is almost as if they have within them. I'm almost afraid to say it because people will assume I'm being condescending or arrogant about this, but just hear me out. It's almost as if we have this sense of divinity within us and that we hold the power over whether or not you're going to be pardoned or you're going to be forgiven on the day of judgment or when your reckoning comes and all of that. And at no point in time do many of us pause to wonder if what we actually feel so strongly about, if that's even warranted in the first place. Everyone's talking about forgiveness, but very few people actually understand what forgiveness is about. And usually people look at forgiveness as whether or not they're going to hold on to the bitterness. And even that is not entirely true, because if I think about it, there's a lot of people who say they forgive, but they're still bitter about it. And then they say, no, I forgive, but I won't forget. Okay, if you're going to forgive, but you won't forget, and I'm talking about this as like a deliberate effort, right? If you're going to deliberately remember, aren't you still holding on to the bitterness of it? And if you are, then what do you actually mean when you say you forgive? And this is something that a lot of people struggle with. It's something I tend to fluctuate with as well myself, but in my efforts to try to make sense of it, I think there's a whole lot that goes into forgiveness that we don't ever consider, including understanding, accountability, acceptance, purpose, all of those things. So when we stop at looking at forgiveness as being this kind of monolithic, I like that word, this single catch-all thing that I'm going to forgive you or I'm not going to forgive you, and then that demonstrates my benevolence as a human because I'm so forgiving and all of that. Yeah. If your act of forgiveness feeds your ego, then is it really forgiveness or is it really an indulgence of your ego? So I came across a clip by a man by the name of Bilal Assad. He's one of the few Muslim speakers that I have a lot of respect for because he's very balanced and very moderate in tone in the way he presents his views. He's not the screaming imams and things like that, right? So this is what he had to say about it.
Question here is, how can I stop feeling like my right has been taken when I keep forgiving and the people keep taking my right and taking advantage? No, don't forgive. Don't forgive. What I mean by this, okay, so forgiveness is your right. You can forgive or you can choose not to forgive. And I'm going to give you good news. If in this case, your forgiveness that you did the first time, and then you did the second time, you did the third time, or even the first time, and then you realized that person is taking my forgiveness for advantage. They're taking it for granted. They're continuing to take in the right. Now I want to ask you, is taking rights sinful? Is it sinful or not? Yes, it's sinful. If I forgive that person and my forgiveness is now empowering that person to continue their sin, guess what? By not forgiving them and telling them, I now get rewarded. I get rewarded for not forgiving them. Because now I am not forgiving them because this is enabling that person to continue taking my right, number one. And number two, it's enabling my brother or sister to continue to sin.
So there's a couple of things that caught my attention in what he said, right? Firstly is the issue of whether or not your forgiveness, your generosity of spirit, is it actually achieving something good or is it enabling something bad? So it reminds me of another hadith that I came across. They said something to the effect that the nations before you were destroyed because they pardoned those who were in power and who were wealthy, and they severely punished those who were poor, right? The ones who didn't have power and authority and influence. And that's another thing that comes into play when we talk about forgiveness. People are always willing to forgive the people who appear to be like socially kind of superior, where they have a social stature and a social standing, where forgiving them and talking about how it is that we must look past their faults and everyone is human and everything else and no one can judge us besides Allah and all of that. Shh, please, that's not how it works. It's about justice, understanding, resisting oppression. What is it that you're enabling in the process? Are you allowing someone to be able to move beyond it so that they can do good with their life? Or are you holding them in that space because you keep reminding them about their shortcomings and things, right? That's the one thing. The other thing that that clip reminded me of is this focus on reward, right? And I know it's meant in a good, positive way, but I think that's problematic. When we do something because of what we're going to get from it, it taints our sincerity of intention. So when it comes to forgiveness, when it comes to needing to let go of the past, when it comes to reconciling how something played out and why it played out so that we can move on, there's a lot more than just about the reward system that goes with it. Because the biggest reward you're going to experience, in my opinion anyway, is the ease that it creates and the capacity it frees up within you so that you can actually show up with that capacity for something better. And one of the things that people don't consider often enough, which I think is probably the biggest tragedy of this whole issue of forgiveness, is that while you're holding on to the bitterness of something else, it's depleting your capacity to show up for the people who deserve you to show up for them, who have rights over you. So what is the whole point of forgiveness then, right? The point of forgiveness is about social harmony more than anything else, in my mind anyway. Because again, I'm reminded by that hadith that where the Prophet ﷺ himself said that it's not his good deeds that's going to get him into Jannah, it's actually Allah's mercy. And then that calls into question something I've repeated many times before, and I still remind myself about, is that then what is the purpose of good deeds? If the purpose of good deeds is not to get you into heaven, into Jannah, then what's the purpose of it? Is it the reward and punishment structure? No, it isn't. Another interesting thing around this whole forgiveness concept is where I came across this article once where they were talking about the root word of the word punishment in Arabic, right? And they were saying the root meaning of it is hindrance. So rather than seeing it as a punishment for something, see it as a hindrance against something else. So when you do something bad, it hinders you from something good. So we need to think about it in that way. And the punishment, the actual like exercise of punishment against someone, you know, the retribution, the corrective measures, the corrective action, the penal code, whatever you want to call it, that has its place, right? Because those are the deterrents, those are the balances of justice and social harmony as well. But I'm talking now about forgiveness within the context of personal relationships and personal interactions. Because if I confuse this, and I always assume that when we talk about these things, we assume the stature of someone who's in a position to judge. It's not about judgment, it's about reconciliation, it's about understanding, it's about peace. So when we look at it from that perspective, holding on to the bitterness of something that happened, it's one thing to grieve about it, it's one thing to still be hurt about it, but to hold on to bitterness is a completely different thing. To hold on to bitterness is almost saying that I'm not willing to let go of this until I know that person paid for it. Now, as a Muslim, that's problematic because then it calls into question whether or not you trust Allah's promise to be true. And when I say Allah's promise to be true, it's that we promised that every good you do will be rewarded, and every ill that you do you will be held accountable for it, right? You will be taken to account for it. Now, if you trust that is true, then you have to also trust that what is within your grasp, what is within your reach to be able to correct someone else's behavior where they might have caused harm to you or to someone around you, you are, by conviction in your faith, you are expected to actually exercise that ability, right? That's enjoying what is right, forbid what is wrong. And if you don't exercise that, then you become part of the oppression, where you turn a blind eye to oppression and then you say, well, it's none of my business, you know, I've got my own problems, so that's not my problem. So you don't speak up about it. And then it becomes a pandemic of injustice in the world, and you look at it and you think, yeah, you see, everyone just like, they just don't get it, and they're all just so evil and so corrupt and everything else. Meanwhile, in our own circles, we keep quiet for it. when we see these things happening, we remain silent because we want to maintain the peace. We want to maintain family harmony and all of those sorts of things. But we don't speak up and challenge what is actually wrong. So that is where forgiveness then takes on a very distorted and unhealthy dimension, right? Is where we start thinking that forgiveness should be given so that we can maintain the peace. Forgiveness should be given so that we stop letting someone feel bad about something, or so that we can feel good about something, or so that we can appear to be, like I said, benevolent or magnanimous or generous in spirit. That look at us, we are so virtuous that we're forgiving them. True forgiveness is about a really meaningful, substantial reconciliation in your mind, in your heart, about what transpired. The impact of what it is that has hurt you, that has been done to you, that impact you still live with, right? Like the story of the Prophet ﷺ and Wahshi, the man who killed his uncle, Hamza in the Battle of Uhud, where the hurt and the pain of the loss of Hamza and how he was killed and why he was killed also, that stayed with the Prophet ﷺ. But his response to Wahshi when he forgave him was, don't show your face to me, or don't appear in front of me often, because you remind me of that pain, of that loss, of that tragedy, right? So there's a difference between feeling hurt versus being bitter. Being bitter is this incessant need, this consistent desire to want to exact revenge. But if you can't exact revenge, if you feel it's outside of your control and all of that, then you sit and you curse and you curse and you curse. And you think, well, I'm warranted, I'm justified in cursing. Even if you are justified in cursing, at what cost are you using that precious time, life, energy, focus, mental capacity, emotional capacity? At what cost are you using all of that to curse someone as opposed to using it for good in the people's lives around you who do care about you and who you do care about? So when it comes to forgiveness, we need to be a lot more deliberate and a lot more conscious about what is it about. Is it really this divinity that we think we possess? Is it really because we have a right to withhold forgiveness from someone? What's the purpose behind your forgiveness? Is it because of how you want to appear? Is it about how you don't want someone to get away with something? This is a typical case of how it is that we end up solving the wrong problem. It's like when you hold on to bitterness, I think there's a Japanese proverb that says something about a bitter heart eats its owner, right? And that's what happens. Feeling oppressed, feeling as if your rights have been trampled upon and all of that. No one's saying that you're unjustified or you're wrong for feeling that way and for focusing on that, or for needing people to understand how you feel about it or what they've done to you. But you need to be balanced in how you approach these things, right? Because everything comes at a cost, at a severe cost. And if it's the cost of life, of time wasted, where you could be doing good, where you could be benefiting others, where others who have rights over you are being denied their rights because you fixated on your rights that were denied from someone else, then you become part of the problem. You're not this generous spirit anymore that's trying to just claim what is rightfully yours. Say, for example, you got no shortage of adults these days who are claiming childhood trauma, etc., and having been raised by narcissistic parents and all of that. And they're so fixated on that they don't realize how that has tainted their ability to show up for their children. So while they then go about doing their best, and you must just understand how much I've been through, that's why I'm at least showing up, and it's not like what my father did to me and not what my mother did to me. You got it better than this. You got it better than I had it, and all of that. You're literally tainting the next generation with your experiences from the previous generation. And your experiences from the previous generation is very much subjective. And that's why if you don't look back with understanding, if you don't look at yourself with understanding, if you don't look at the person who may have offended or hurt you or betrayed you with understanding, not to let them off the hook or to condone their behavior, that's not the point. But understanding so that the impact of it isn't something that weighs you down for the rest of your life. That's where chronic illness come from, right? It's people who hold this internal bitterness and this internal anguish about something that they're just not willing to let go of. Or sometimes they say, I don't know how to let go of it, it's just consuming me. That's an indication that understanding and perspective needs to be more informed, because that's why we can't let go of something, because we just haven't reconciled it. It just doesn't seem right. Coming back to the clip, when you want to forgive without good reason, without good measure to ensure that what you're forgiving is warranted to be forgiven, right? Not because they deserve it, but because the chances of someone doing that again to someone else, or to even to do the same thing to you again, the chances of them doing that, you have reason to believe that they're genuinely remorseful about it. Then you can say, okay, I forgive you. And you allow them to then interact with you and operate in your space again, in your life, and all of that again. And if they do the same thing again, and you forgive again, and you do the same thing, and they do the same thing again, and you forgive again, then you think, yeah, I'm the better one. I'm always turning the other cheek, or showing them that I'm not going to hold on to the past, and that because life is too precious and blah, blah, blah. You're enabling them. And then when you enable someone to treat you badly, and they get away with it every single time, they have reason to believe that it's not such a big deal. So now they're going to do it to someone else, and that person pushes back and they say, what's your problem? I look at they understand me. They know this is just how I am. So why must you take offense to me just being who I am? And this is where you get like people who are abrasive and who are obnoxious in their way, or uncouth in their ways. You get some people who go around, in Afrikaans they say fatterig, they touchy, they handy with a lot of people, and they always want to like put their hands on people and put their hands on women or on men, whatever it is, because it happens from both sides. It's not specific to one gender. But you get people who then become empowered in believing that it's acceptable to do these things socially, because like if they don't have a problem with it, why must you have a problem with it? And that's what happens when you forgive for the wrong reasons and you hold on to bitterness for the wrong reasons, is you actually end up enabling cycles of oppression and bad behavior and harmful practices without meaning to. And then you sit back and you're so caught up in the self-pity and the pain and the bitterness that you're focused on, that you don't realize what impact you're having on others around you, or others that you don't even know about. So when we talk about forgiveness, we need to be sure that the issue of forgiveness is one that's related to reconciliation, understanding, and reconciliation in your mind, not necessarily reconciliation with the person who treated you badly. So when I say reconciliation, what I mean is that, like in accounting, if you spend money here, you need to know where the money's coming from, right? Kind of thing. I suck at accounting, but just bear with me. There has to be a kind of check and balance. Like if I'm going to be able to do this, I need to know how I'm going to acquire what I need to be able to do that, right? That's reconciliation. So if I didn't do something properly here, I need to understand how not doing it properly there has had a negative impact on something here. That's reconciliation, cause and effect, right? So when it comes to forgiveness, you have to have that kind of understanding about cause and effect. Okay, I can understand why it is that someone treated me that way, but I also understand that it wasn't necessarily directed at me personally. It was them venting about something else that happened to them. It doesn't make it right for them to have treated me that way, but it's very different to believing that they were deliberately, consciously, intentionally malicious towards who I am, rather than just towards me because I was in the wrong place at the right time for them. Very different. If someone is grappling with their demons about a past experience that they had, and that causes them to act badly towards me, and to recognize that it's their battle with their demons that caused that, so that I don't become bitter towards them. I just take steps to mitigate the impact of them battling with their demons around me. Does that make sense? So what we're saying is that forgiveness in itself is just, at best, a token gesture. If the substance behind forgiveness has to be understanding, reconciliation, has to be a true, meaningful kind of grasp of why it is that something is not worth holding on to. Now, if you're in the middle of being treated badly, and you can see the oppression is still continuing, and it's not only continuing with you, it's continuing with others around you. Like say, for example, you've got an abusive family member. that abusive family member is not only abusing your rights and your physical space or whatever it is, they're also abusing the children around you and other extended family members in it. In that case, you can't reconcile and say, no, it's just they've got their demons and everyone around them must just understand this. No. Because there's that other hadith again that comes into this, in my mind anyway, it all connects, is that a believer is one who aids the oppressed and the oppressor, right? And the way you aid the oppressor is you prevent them from oppressing. Because this is another thing that we need to consider, is that forgiveness comes also with how it is that you discourage someone from persisting in their bad behavior. And if you're in a position to actually stop their bad behavior, to prevent it, not just to discourage them about it, then that's where your faith is tested, right? Because the strongest form of faith is that if you see a wrong, you stop it, you challenge it with your hands physically, you push back. And if you can't do that, then you at least speak out against it. And if you can't even do that, then at least you feel in your heart, you feel a certain sense of desire to want to see it stop, or to wish that it will stop, or to pray for intervention, divine intervention of some sort, that it must be stopped. But you don't just become indifferent to it and sit back and say, well, it's not my problem, because look, someone's treated me badly and I know what it's like and I've got my own problems, so that's your problem. You deal with it and I got my own problems to deal with. That's how we lose empathy. So forgiveness is something that if you fixate on whether or not it's your right to forgive someone, you're distracted. You're distracted by the misery and by the pain and by the bitterness of how it is that you think someone treated you and how you think you deserve to be treated versus the way they went about treating you. And again, all of that has its own merit. But if you're not solving that problem, sitting and brooding over the bitterness and brooding over the incident of how it is that they treated you badly, and then that becomes a generational kind of bitterness that is carried forward from one generation to another generation, between families and between siblings and between who knows what. What are you actually serving? Your ego? Because you're not serving goodness. You're not serving anything that says that I'm doing something to positively and constructively diminish the impact of that person's oppression or that person's evil. You're not actively providing a solution or actively building resilience and understanding and wisdom in the people who are going to be on the receiving end of that, so that they can respond in a way that mitigates the impact of it or reduces the probability of it happening. All of those things are where purpose of life and accountability comes in. So if we're going to look at forgiveness, look at it beyond just how you feel about it. Because that's where we really go wrong these days, is everyone worships their emotions. Just because they feel a certain way, they think that because they feel that way, everyone must understand first how they feel before they're willing to do something about it. Everyone must first consider how someone's feelings are going to be hurt before they consider whether or not they must challenge them or correct them about what they're doing wrong. And that's why you end up in a society that is so dysfunctional, because everything is about feelings, and feelings are subjective. So that means you cannot have a meaningful rule of law or meaningful moral compass, because it's all subjective. It's about how you feel about that effort at justice, not about whether or not that there's merit behind what you're trying to do. We need to move away from worshipping our emotions and start recognizing that our emotions is only an indication of how it affects us, and then understanding why it affects us that way is more important before we respond to it. Because that's the mindfulness and self-awareness that's needed, so that we don't become a source of injustice on someone else while we perceive them to be treating us unjustly. That's how you get victims becoming the worst oppressors, is when you think that your bitterness and your anger and your hurt justifies your rage. It doesn't. If you can't discern, if you can't differentiate in your internal reflections between your ego, your emotional sensitivities, your feeling of humiliation because of what you think others think of you, if you can't differentiate between all of that and what's really going on and what's really warranted in front of you, in your dealings with others, then chances are very, very good that you are actually part of the problem and you're actually oppressing and denying the rights of those who have done nothing wrong to you because of your fixation on those who have apparently done something wrong to you. We need to rise above this. We need to be better than this. Because I think in this fixation of forgiveness, we lose empathy. Because forgiveness, if we focus on that, we don't focus on understanding someone else's struggle. We only focus on why it is that they deserve to be punished. And that's when we start stepping into the space of the divine, where we start assuming that we're in a position to judge others based on what we think their motives are, rather than understanding what was the contributing factors to their behavior. So there is no extreme like only Allah can judge. That's rubbish. We judge people all the time. If we don't judge people, we wouldn't know how to respond to them. So you have to either judge them to be good and decent, and that's why you make yourself available to interact with them, or you have to judge them to be toxic and all of that nonsense, and that's why you stay away from them and you go and tell everyone else about how it is that they must stay away from them and all of that. We judge all the time. So this nonsense about only Allah can judge me, it is what I just said it is. It's nonsense. You have to be purposeful and measured and mature and accountable and realistic and all of those simple things. It's simple things that we've complicated about taking accountability for how it is that you go about treating others and how it is that you go about responding to what it is that you don't like. And your response is a reflection of who you are. It's not a reflection of what they deserve. The moment you're doing things because people deserve you to do that, rather than because that's who you choose to consciously be as a person, as a human, then you're part of the problem, because you're reactive to what others do rather than shaping how it is that you want to influence that space to be better than that. So yeah, you might have reason to hold some bitterness in your heart or some regret or some pain or some anger or something, but don't let that define how it is that you show up in life. And more importantly, I think the most important part for me in all of this is understand what you're enabling when you want to be so virtuous by forgiving everyone and pardoning everyone and never standing up for anything because you're a pacifist. Understand what you're enabling in all of that. And also understand what's the cost of holding on to bitterness and going to the other extreme of being enraged and always angry. And then you'll see the arthritis setting in, and you'll see the inflammation of the gut setting in, and you'll see inflammation of your joints and your spine and all these sorts of things setting in, because that's what happens when you internalize that anger and that bitterness to such an extent, because you can't express it, because you feel as if like Allah will take care of you, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. I'm not going to forgive you. You're actually doing yourself more harm than anything else. If you trust Allah's promise to be true, then trust it to be true. And accept that if something is out of your hands to get justice in this world, then trust that justice will come. But you need to focus on how it is that you need to be of benefit, rather than how you stagnating because you're waiting for justice. I could probably talk in circles about this all the time, but please just let's not lose ourselves to whether or not someone deserves to be forgiven, and focus on, is there good reason for me to withhold forgiveness? And if I am talking about forgiveness, am I talking about accepting an apology, or am I talking about actual forgiveness, reconciliation in my mind about the reason why it is that someone may not have been aware of how it is that they were behaving and what impact that was having? Let me know what you think. There's a lot that goes into this, and I'm sure it's a very emotive subject for many, because the emotions are stirred so deeply when we contemplate how it is that our rights have been trampled upon, and how it is that people that we might have made lots of sacrifices for may have responded in the most vilest of ways towards us. And if you're going to be defined by that and you're going to fixate on that, you're allowing that moment of bad behavior to taint a whole lot of moments of goodness that you could have had otherwise. I'm Zaid Ismail, and this is my rebuttal. Take care.